Welcome back all my fashionistas, my fashion designers, and my pattern makers. Have you ever heard of the phrase creativity is magical? In the world of fashion, we all strive for creativity. So if you have a basic bodice pattern with a waist dart, we can say that that is ordinary. In order for it to be extraordinary, we have to add a dash of creativity to that bodice pattern by shifting the waist dart to other places on the pattern. You can create several darts on your pattern using the dart manipulation procedure. Dart manipulation is simply taking that dart that is in one area, closing it and shifting it to another area on that same pattern piece. Today I am going to show you how to perform 4 types of dart manipulation. As a bonus, I'm also going to give you an extra piece at the end, and you're going to have to stick around to see what that is all about. So you can change the location of this dart that is now at the waist to the side seam, what we call the underarm, or you can change it to the armhole, or you can also change it to the shoulder, or another place that you can change it to is the neckline. So I am going to show you how I can manipulate this dart procedure for you to show you how you can change it and have several darts in other places on your garment. You don't have to be basic. No, I don't like to be basic. I like variety. And fashion is all about styling your garment well. And in styling your garment, you are also starting from the basic by styling the pattern pieces also. The first dart manipulation that I'm going to illustrate to you today is going to be the underarm dart manipulation. Now we are going to shift the dart that is at the waist to under the arm, which is going to be at the side seam. That's what we call it, the underarm. So it's going to be at the side seam. So I'm going to trace out this for you. So we're going to trace up to the dart here because we need to close this dart, right? And I'm going to trace and that's tracing the waist to beginning of the dart, and I'm going to trace the neckline also, and I'm going to trace along the shoulder. I'm going to come down, and I'm going to also trace along the armhole to 2 inches below the armhole at the side seam. So I have my 2-inch mark there. And then what you're going to do, you're going to pivot. So because I'm illustrating on the whiteboard, I can't put a thumbtack here, but you would put your thumbtack there and you would pivot. So you would pivot to close this dart. Make sure you line up right here. And once you do that, you're going to trace right here, but you're going to stop right at that mark. So you need to stop right at that mark there that you had for the other piece. Because of illustration purposes here, I need to now go back and mark where the tip of my dart is. The next thing that I want you to do is that because you have shifted the dart from your waist to your side seam, or what we call under the arm, because that's the under the arm dart, we are going to shorten from the bust point by 1 inch. So we need to shorten this 1 inch over. So we're going to go 1 inch here. This would be the dart line, right? And this would be the other part of the dart. But we need to shorten this, go in 1 inch. But be careful now. You need to measure this. And I'm measuring this, and I have now 2.5 inches. So it's going to be 1.25 inch. So you need to find the center, right? Find the center right here, and that is your point here, your 1 inch over. That is going to be a point. A lot of students might just want to put that mark there, but you have to make sure it's coming from the tip first and going back, and that's the half point of where the dart is. So next thing you need to do now is to create that new dart line 1 inch away from the bust point, And the purple line now is going to be a new dart line. So we call this your underarm dart. Some people might say the side seam, but it's really the underarm. One thing I must say to you is that after you have closed this dart at the waist and shifted it to the underarm, which is what we call the side seam, you have to now close that dart. But you are going to make it the 1 inch away from the tip of the dart from the original pattern. So you have to fold your dart with the fullness to the bottom, or fullness to the waist area, fullness down. So when you fold it with fullness down, you're going to tape it. You are now going to reshape this side right here, because sometimes it's off like maybe 1/16 of an inch. So because it's off 1/16 of an inch, you want to make sure you get a straight line here. So you want to have that straight line, and you reshape it. And then what you do after that is that you're going to use your tracing wheel and trace through the folded dart area. You want to go through the layers of the paper right there to get that shape. And once you get that, then you can open it to create that new side seam line for the side seam. This is very important because you have to close the dart. So now that you have this, you have to close the dart. Okay? So this is what it will look like on the paper. And remember, fullness always go down to the waist for this. And make sure you are folding it to the new tip, which is 1 inch away from the original tip of the dart from the waist. This is what the end product would look like. This is the center front. The second dart manipulation that I'm going to illustrate for you is the armhole dart. So the armhole dart is slightly different, because with the armhole dart, you need to go up 3 inches from the armhole area. And when you got up 3 inches from the armhole area, then you can close the bottom waist dart and shift that up there. So let's go ahead. So I have already marked my 3 inch mark along my bodice pattern from my side seam along here. So you are now going to trace this. You're going to trace from the center front along the waist to the dart opening. Make sure you put the point there for your dart, and then you are going to trace along the neckline, along the shoulders. You're going to come down also to that mark that you have at the armhole, and then you are going to pivot. So I'm going to pivot and close my dart. So when you pivot and close your dart, you're going to continue with your tracing of the outline of your pattern from that mark along the armhole and go down to the side seam. Make sure that you have that dart mark there on the under piece. Because I'm using the whiteboard, it's kind of hard to get it, but make sure you have that. This is now the position of your new dart. It's going to come from the armhole. So let's trace this one out. But once again, because this is the armhole dart, you need to go from your bust point 1 inch away from your bust point also. So I'm going to do that for you here. So let's catch the width again of that dart. And I know from memory we should have the same 2.5. Yes, we need 1.25 inches over, and that would be a center. So you can draw a line here is better. When I'm doing it, I like to do it that way. You go 1 inch and then you are going to connect this to your new dart line. Now once again, as I stated, you have to close your dart because you're using paper. I'm just illustrating on the whiteboard. You are going to close your dart, fold from this side up because the fullness needs to go towards the waist. And once you do that, you should be able to see a different outline when you connect your armhole properly. When you fold it and you tape it, then you can make sure that you have a smooth curve along the armhole, and make sure you mark for the 1/2 inch in for the seam line, and you use your tracing wheel and trace right along this area also for the 1/2 inch. You should get something like that, tracing around, okay? Because remember now, this would have your seam allowance here. I'm just illustrating on the whiteboard. This armhole dart bust line, you're going to go in 1 inch. Okay, the same thing for over here when we went in 1 inch from the bust point to get the new tip of the dart. And this is what we call the armhole dart. The third dart manipulation that I'm going to illustrate for you is the shoulder dart. And let's get right into it. For the shoulder dart, you need to measure your shoulder distance here, and I have 5 inches for my shoulder distance. And what you need to do, you need to create a mark at the center. So I have a center mark right here on the shoulder, and that's what you need to use as your guide. So let's trace this pattern up from the center front at the waist to the beginning of the dart, and we are also going to trace along the neckline, along the shoulder to that mark. All right, you need to have that mark right there. You need to mark where the dart is going to be. Place your thumbtack right at the tip of that dart. You're going to pivot this to close it. And once you pivot that to close it, you're going to continue tracing around this side seam. Go to the armhole. Trace along the armhole to the tip of the shoulder and the armhole to that mark. So once you trace that, now you will connect these two. So this is your dart. But because this is now on your shoulder, you have to do something different. You are not going to go up 1 inch like you did with the previous 2 types of dart manipulations. For the shoulder, you need to go up 2 inches, and you're going to measure the width here. And for this one, I have 4 inches here, but obviously on your paper, when you're doing it, you have to go with your measurement that you have, and this would be the center mark right here. Yep, line it up right here. So 2 inches up. So now that you have that 2 inches there, we are going to create the new dart line, which is the orange line right here. And I'm going to take it to this one. Right? And you have your center line there. High fullness to center front. Just like when you had the waist dart here, your fullness is going to go towards the center front. What you need to do again, fold it, trace it out. Your neck seam allowance is always 1/4 inch, and you have your seam allowance there. Make sure you have a smooth line, straight line at your shoulder for the front. This is simply just the shoulder dart, and we're going to label this as the shoulder dart. The fourth dart manipulation that I am going to illustrate for you is simply what we call the neck dart. So that one is coming from the neck area. For the neck dart, there's one trick that you have to do. You have to go in 1.25 inches. So go in 1.25 inches, that would be nice. I mean, if you go 1.5 inches, that's fine, but try not to go like 2 inches in. Unless you want to create something different, a different style line. But for now, we can do 1.25 inches, maximum, I would say 1.5 inches in along your neckline. Let's trace this out. And I've already marked along my neckline my mark that I need to go to. So I am going to trace out from the center front at neck up to that point where the mark is, and then I'm going to come down to the center front at waist, and I'm going to trace to the tip of the dart. So once I do that, I'm going to also mark the tip of the dart. Then what you're going to do, you're going to pivot and close this dart. So now that you have pivoted and closed the dart, you can go ahead and you can continue to trace around the side seam, trace along the armhole, trace up to the shoulder, down to the neckline where that mark is, and have it there. So that is your outline. Now you are going to connect the dart, and this is the old dart that you're connecting. And then the next step that you need to do now, because this is coming from the neck, what you need to do, you are going to go up 2 inches also from the bust point to create the new end of the dart, or the tip of the dart. You need to measure this also, right? I have now 3.5, so I need halfway here. So this is it. Draw your line down, then you need to mark off 2 inches up from the bust point, and this will be your new dart line. This is also your new dart line. So because this is your neck, so make sure you still have your perpendicular line at your neck and center front. There, you need to fold this with the fullness going towards the center front. So fullness towards the center front. For the fullness to go to the center front, you are going to fold along this line over to here, and you're going to tape it. And when you tape it now, you will notice that you may end up with a line that is going to look like that when you recreate your curve for your neckline. And once you have that, make sure that you mark off your seam line, and you should have, because it's the neckline, 1/4 inch for your seam line here, because it is the neckline. And you simply now, once you have that, you are going to make sure that you have the same mark underneath, because when you are making this garment, if you don't have that, that is going to create a problem, especially when you are finishing the garment. Okay, so make sure you have that. So this new dart point that we have, we went up 2 inches for the new dart line, and this is from the bust point, 2 inches up from the bust point to create your new dart line, which is right here, the tip of the dart. Now that you know how to use one dart that is on a bodice pattern to manipulate it to create 4 other types of darts, I hope that you will do those and create various styles. I also want to share another secret with you. You did not have to close all of the dart here to create the other dart manipulations around the bodice of the garment. You could have simply closed the dart halfway, meaning that you could have still kept the dart here, but only half of it. So when I say half of it, I'm going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to trace out my pattern here. And I'm going to show you what it's going to look like when I do the dart manipulation of the shoulder dart. So I'm going to do half. So I'm tracing up to the beginning of the dart, and I'm going to trace along the neckline and the shoulder to the point where I want to stop on the shoulder. And then what I'm going to do, yep, came out of the back. So what I'm going to do next is that I'm going to pivot, but I'm not going to close all of it. I'm just going to close half of it. So see where my half mark is right here? Notice I'm pivoting it to there. So this is now going to be my new end of the dart, or my new dart width. Trace along the side seam, and you also are going to trace the armhole and you're going to trace up to the mark right there. Right, so this is what it's going to look like, and it's going to be narrow, okay? But because you have the line here, you need to go up 2 inches. So I'm going to first measure the distance here for my dart width, and I am going to create that line that is going to go from here. But I need to go up my 2 inches now, so I go up my 2 inches right there, and I'm going to form out the remaining part of the dart. So this is going to be the new shoulder dart. So this is what we end up having. And because you have this piece right here, and I only did a half of it, which was 1.5 inches, my dart width here, you can simply also go back and create that center line for the dart. All right. And now all you have to do, because you still have the seam allowance here along the waist of your 1/2 inch seam allowance here. I'm just using my eyesight now to do it by hand freely. You have your seam allowance there. You are going to close this dart, meaning that the fullness is going to go towards the center front. All right, so the fullness is going to go towards the center front. So you fold right here over to this line, and once you do that, once you fold your dart here, you will notice that you will end up with a little lip here. You need to have it, the little extension, so that when you are sewing, you will have a better flow there, because you will have this part being folded. You also need to do the same thing for the top, and you have it folded also. Something that looks like that. So it is very important. And let me illustrate for you. This is the same shoulder dart manipulation that I just did over here. This is what we call the 2 dart, but one shoulder dart, or simply shoulder dart. This would be the shoulder dart and waist dart. So you have 2 darts there in one. So 2 darts on the front of your garment. That I love, because guess what? Also, you can use this when you're creating your princess seam, and you will follow along this line. So you can do a lot of things when it comes to the dart and forming your garment, okay? It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to close your dart like you see on here, where you close the entire dart and just shift it, pivot it, manipulate it, so that you end up with all of that width on here. You see the difference here when the dart on the shoulder is wider when you close the dart, but when you keep half of the dart at the waist and you manipulate your pattern in such a way that you end up with a dart at the shoulder, you don't have that much of a wide dart. There is narrower than when you had closed all of the darts. I hope that this video has helped you tremendously and that you have learned a lot when it comes to dart manipulation. It is a good way of creating other style lines on your garment and different look of your garment, because we all don't want to have the same plain blouse with just one dart coming from the waist and also a dart from the side. This is a good way of creating different style line for your garment. Your garment doesn't have to look plain and boring. You can create it in such a way that even though we did the one with this underarm dart, you could have done the same thing where you have half of the dart here and half under the arm extended towards 1 inch from the bust line. That extraordinary person and create that extraordinary look on your garment. Shift your dart around and be creative, and you will see a different style in your garment. Thank you for watching. Please share and like this video so that others around the world can see it. And if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button. You're here at the right place where you will learn how to make your patterns and to make your own clothes.